With her phone to her ear, and the knowledge that she's in the wrong area, Kimberly speeds down an unfamiliar West Virginia road. Her representative tries to persuade her that this reality program is a chance, while she is on the other end of the conversation. All she sees are empty tarmac, trees, and pointless signs. This is how Wrong Turn 2, Dead End starts, with a competitor who hasn't made it to the set and the television program that has unintentionally already lost its first victim. Kimberly is not a total unknown. She treats the project as a backup because she has been on television and has a face that the production can market as the group's celebrity. She bemoans the trip, the vehicle, the salary, and the reality that she doesn't truly own the prize. But the woodland does not respond to her annoyance. It doesn't move. The road gets narrower, the phone coverage gets weaker, and an ancient paper mill appears where the map barely indicates anything. Then the road is crossed by something. Before Kimberly can comprehend, the impact occurs. The scene's haughty lightness is destroyed as a boy's body rolls in front of the car. She brakes, exits, and rushes in his direction. She approaches him, tries to assist him, and makes sure he is breathing despite the terror. It's the proper human gesture. In the most unfavorable location, the boy lashes out at her after opening his eyes. After escaping, Kimberly returns to the automobile, but the jungle has already blocked her path in every way. Three Finger, who made it through the first movie, shows up in front of her. He is disfigured, nimble, and seems delighted to have found her. She is ruthlessly brought down by an axe stroke, and a few moments later, he and another family member pull away what's left. As though the death had been a routine household task, rather than an unexpected outburst of violence, the new goal of the sequel, instantly stated in this opening. In his first feature picture, Joe Lynch does not wish to carefully copy Wrong Turn from 2003. He aims to surpass its impact, push the tone to the limit, and demonstrate that moving to the direct-to-video business does not inevitably translate into a more subdued movie. The production operates within more constrained parameters, has a smaller budget, and is filmed in Vancouver, yet Lynch turns these constraints into energy. The opening chapter's promise is replaced with the inaugural death, which is more than simply a bloody bait. A tiny number of travelers will no longer be the victims of the diversion. This time, a large number of people will willingly enter the cannibal's domain because they think they're taking part in a performance. As soon as the movie gets to the actual set, the irony becomes apparent. A crew is setting up the apocalypse, Ultimate Survivalist, a reality show centered on the end of civilization, in the middle of the wilderness. The scenario depicts a destroyed world devoid of institutions, conveniences, and security. For 5 days, 6 competitors must show that they are more resilient than the others. Everything that looks wild has been arranged to produce entertainment. The cameras are concealed among the trees, and technicians are inspecting the connections. Henry Rollins plays former Marine Colonel Dale Murphy, who is in charge of the show. Dale doesn't appear to be a TV host who has picked up some military lingo. Discipline is not a disguise for him. Based on his physique, voice, and manner of occupying space, he talks about the disaster as though it had already occurred when he tapes the introduction. The rules have vanished and the world has disintegrated. Only those who can adapt will survive. The crew around him celebrates the outcome. It's a good promotional video for them. However, since Kimberly has just been consumed by the real local apocalypse, every word has already taken on a new meaning for the audience. Michael, who would rather just be called M, is the program's creative director. He views the participants as components of a formula, speaks in terms of characters, sounds, and visuals, and wants the pilot to become a series. Mara, the producer who works next to him, is far less certain about the world she's contributing to. There is a sentimental connection between Michael and Mara as well, but he appears more concerned with his identity as a television writer than with the person who helps him. The movie is already preparing for a second type of predation. Professionals hunt emotions, disputes, and humiliations to edit, while beasts that hunt bodies are found off the set, one by one. The competitors are shown, each reduced to the version of themselves that a television network can comprehend in a matter of seconds. Jonesy is a boisterous skateboarder who believes that showing confidence in front of the camera is a posture. He wants to be remembered, so he wears the symbol of infinity on his body. But as soon as he gets harmed, his confidence wanes. Elena is a lingerie model who competes by using her charm. She doesn't act innocent, since she understands that other people's desires might work to her advantage and views visibility as a component of the prize. Jake used to play football. His intended career path was ruined by 3 shoulder operations, and the reality program gives him a chance to demonstrate that his ambition to succeed has not been diminished by physical setbacks. Amber has served in the military in Iraq. She's forceful, well-trained, accustomed to not asking for permission, and irritated when people mistake toughness for loudness. Graphic artist Nina portrays herself as the group's antithesis. She's reticent, mistrustful, vegan, and irritated by those who make every move seem like a show. She makes it apparent that she doesn't need friends, and is only there for the money. In a survival movie, this seemingly little comment turns into a hazardous crack. People who think they can rely only on themselves will quickly realize that the forest is designed to separate. Kimberly remains unaccounted for. When Mara calls her, nobody picks up. M becomes agitated because he views the absence of the well-known competitor as largely a production issue. The cameras are prepared, the pilot's money is already burning, and there is no time to locate a substitute. Mara, who is already on site, is familiar with the structure, is able to record a presentation, and may enter as the 6th candidate, provides the solution with the merciless ease of someone who works under pressure. Naturally, she declines. She is unprepared, lacks the other's mindset, and is reluctant to reveal herself. However, Michael is adamant and uses their bond as power. He reassures her that everything will be all right, minimize her anxiety, and exhorts her to get dressed and put down the phone. Mara agrees on his behalf. It weighs hard because it's a minor, almost insignificant decision. Kimberly chose the incorrect course, which led to her death. Because she can't say no to the wrong person, Mara becomes involved. From the crew's perspective, the 6 are now complete. After gathering them, Dale explains the first phase's logic. The competitors must work in couples because nobody survives on their own. The claimed objective is to reassemble the coalitions that might form following the disintegration of society. Naturally, the television objective is to assemble incompatible characters and watch them blow up. Elena is matched with Jake. Jonesy ends up with Amber. Nina and Mara have to move forward together. The production gathers phones and comforts before departing. Jake notices Nina's attempt to bring some food, despite her aggressive treatment of him. Their initial exchange is almost fun. Jake doesn't react with the same animosity. He takes her meal and makes fun of her, but he doesn't really appear to want to make her feel uncomfortable. He's one of the few characters who makes an effort to connect with the audience without turning it into a tactic right away. The group heads into the woods, while Dale begins the trial. From pre-arranged locations, the cameras track them. The technicians think they have wired the area, that they are the only unseen eyes among the branches, and that they can see everything. This is the point when the movie turns reality against its creators. Because they have cables and lenses installed, the crew believes they have control over the area. In contrast, the cannibals are familiar with that area and do not require maps. They are aware of where to pass, where to fall, and where the wind can muffle a sound. Within a forest that already belongs to someone else, the production has created a game. One of the crew members takes a short break. It's a small gesture, the kind of pause that no editor would preserve and no one would capture. Before he can sound the alarm, 3 Fingers spots him, moves in, and murders him. The person in charge of keeping an eye on the video disappears from view. The system has just lost a piece, but nobody on set is aware of it. Meanwhile, Dale gets ready for one of the exams. For the first time, his training does not provide him with enough edge because he is isolated from the others and concentrated on the equipment. Together, Pa and Trey Dieter attack him. Dale responds because his strength is real, but the confrontation is decided by the numbers and the surprise. He's struck, overpowered, and hauled off. The host of the apocalypse vanishes into the actual apocalypse. However, since the players are ignorant, the game goes on, convinced that the challenges are under control. Each pair follows the production's clues. In this case, that faith is the source of the greatest danger. A technician might be involved if a branch breaks. A figure moving between the trees might be included in the evidence. A camera may have a problem if it stops functioning. There is a comforting explanation, for everything, that would cause them to run. Elena and Jake move at separate speeds. She takes the prospect of being observed seriously, and he takes the competition seriously, because neither of them wants to come seen as the weak spouse. Amber and Jonesy turn cooperation into a never-ending argument. Conversely, Mara and Nina are already broken at the beginning. Mara finds it difficult to embrace the contender position. She still thinks like a producer, worrying about Michael, the set, and things that aren't going as planned. Seeing that frailty, Nina avoids consoling her. Then Mara notices something that is not related to the test. Michael and Elena had wandered off the route among the trees. They don't have a professional relationship. Michael tells Elena that the camera can reward her, give her more room, and make her the program's face when she gives him exactly what he wants. Mara notices the betrayal, but is unable to attribute it to a technological issue. She consented to play the game on Michael's behalf, giving up the phone, the secure location behind the scenes, and even the chance to leave with ease. And he approaches another woman using the same production. Mara is no longer interested in winning at that time. She's ready to go. She ignores the designated path and wanders away in tears. She could be released by Nina. It would be in line with everything she has stated about herself. The notion that each contestant should just defend their own prize, and the thought that she doesn't need anyone. Rather, she goes with her. He doesn't promise friendship, and he doesn't do it softly. She only knows that Mara shouldn't be abandoned in that forest, that to search for a road, a phone, or any other location where they can get in touch with the crew. They come to a remote house as they stray from the track. It was constructed using materials that appear to have absorbed years of smoke and dampness, and it is ancient and unclean. No indication of a predetermined design is there. No cables are visible. No technician is prepared to show up. However, Mara goes in because she feels compelled to ask for assistance despite her suspicions. The air within is different. The arrangement of the objects does not convey a narrative to the cameras. They have been put to use. The surfaces provide evidence of a closed, distorted life that was arranged in accordance with strict guidelines. Mara searches for her phone. As Nina surveys her surroundings, she realizes that this house is not empty in the comforting meaning of the word. The owners have left, so it is empty, and they are able to come back. There's a sound outside. Steps. Voices are broken. The weight of several bodies getting closer. There is not enough time for Mara and Nina to flee through the door. As the family enters, they move into a room, search for a hiding spot, and hold their breath. They catch a glimpse of Ma, Pa, brother, and sister going about the house with the familiarity of someone coming home for a typical day. They are all unaware that the strangers are only a few meters away. Not quite yet. Ma then begins to yell. It's not rage. It's not a phone call. It hurts. The house also shows that this family does more than just hunt in the woods. Even if Mara and Nina are frozen in place, unable to comprehend whether they are seeing an assault or something even more personal, it keeps expanding. However, she is lying on the bed with her family around her, and the newborn already has the same physical deformities as the adults. Pa pays nearly somber attention to the birth, as if that birth were proof that their small universe could go on. Brother and sister walk around the room fearlessly and without distaste. Instead, for Mara and Nina, who are only a short distance away, the scene serves as evidence that the threat is not limited to 3 lone hunters. A whole family is present. It has a home, routines, relationships, and kids, and believes that woodland is inherited. To keep from making noise, Mara puts a palm over her mouth. Nina uses her eyes to look for a way out, but each movement seems excessively large. The wood creaks, yet she cries once more, and the baby lets forth a faint wail in response. Sister lifts her head amid such noises. She felt something. When he gets to the spot where the two women are hidden, nobody moves for a little moment. Sister then responds. The house's balance blows up. The family turns to face Mara and Nina as they emerge from hiding. The seemingly little chambers turn into a maze. A corridor is occupied. A door is shut, and the sole remaining entry descends into a filthy passageway that goes to the latrine. There's no time to decide on a respectable way out. Nina allows herself to fall. Mara goes with her. As the family leaves the house behind them, they race through the trees, past the toilet pit, and emerge outdoors coated in dirt. The acoustic guitar, distorted violin, vocals, and banjo instruments that would normally be found in a rural setting are used in Bear McCreary's music to accompany this metamorphosis, but it causes them to become anxious and nearly ill. The sound is more than just a description of a chase. She feels as though the jungle has begun to pursue her. Mara lacks Nina's endurance, her training, and most importantly, her ability to think properly. She had been grieving over Michael only minutes before. She has no idea where the set is, where the others are, or whether anyone is paying attention. Therefore, she is currently fleeing for her life. Nina remains by her side. In order to avoid leaving her behind, the woman who had vowed not to become connected to anyone slows down. This decision is made in a matter of seconds. However, when the protective stance becomes ineffective, it already discloses Nina's identity. Behind them, Pa shows up. He doesn't try to sprint a big distance to catch up to them. He lifts the spear and the axe. Mara is struck in the head by the strike. Nina pauses. In an instant, everything the movie has created around reality, treachery, and the potential to go back vanishes. Mara is unable to finish the escape. She has ultimately decided to make for herself. She joined the program in order to appease Michael, abandoned it after witnessing him with Elena, and passed away right before someone else chose not to abandon her. The cannibals are too close for Nina to return to her. If you stayed, you would die where you were. He watches as Pa retrieves the body while hiding and holding his breath. The family collects Mara without hesitation. No sign of rage. They already see it as a resource that they can use at home. Nina bolts in the other way as soon as she is able to move. In other places, Michael and Elena continue to live in a fictitious reality. They have transformed a distraction from the game into a private conversation, apart from the others and close to the sea. Michael wants to feel like the one who chooses who will be observed, while Elena wants a place in front of the cameras. Their interaction stems from the implied promise of visibility rather than a sentiment. She makes a seductive offer. He provides editorial authority. Elena is left on the coast when Michael departs and returns to the caravan, convinced that silence equates to solitude. Elena continues to sunbathe. She's unaware that brother is observing her. She doesn't see sister coming out of the water, and she doesn't realize that the family's possession, want, and envy are as twisted as their looks. It's too late when she discovers she's not alone. Sister continually strikes her and attacks her with a machete. Because the movie changes Eleanor's connection with the gaze, Eleanor's death is effective. She has devoted her time to manipulating how, by whom, and for what purpose she is perceived. She becomes the focus of an unavoidable gaze on the lake. There is no audience to perform in front of, no producer prepared to defend it, and no editing that can make it more significant. Those who do not discern between possessing, destroying, and seeking only see the body. Michael, meanwhile, arrives at the production's midpoint. He is irritated by the technician's absence, but he is not yet sufficiently alarmed by it. He views the caravan's moves as yet another act of disobedience, because he is accustomed to issuing commands and getting answers. The car is started by someone. Michael objects, phones the crew, and approaches the cabin. He finds none of his men at the wheel. The car has been taken over by Pa and Ma. The caravan served as the focal point of the reality show, complete with monitors, communications, records, and tangible evidence that Michael was able to see and arrange everything. The family is now moving it away with him. Before he can respond, Pa hurts him and renders him immobile. Michael, the guy who had reduced everyone to a functional role for the performance, is now imprisoned by a program that he no longer oversees. Dale awakens in the woods, bound and ready like prey, with the assurance of someone who has already destroyed men who are powerless to respond. Three Finger walks about him. However, Dale is neither a contender who believes he is in a simulation or an unarmed technician. He embraces reality as soon as he opens his eyes. He doesn't take the time to consider whether the attack is a feature of the game. He assesses the distances, the knots, and the available tools. This is where he differs from the others. Dale had sold a television show using the language of survival, but that language originates from a real discipline. He doesn't need to create a new character when the threat materializes. All he needs to do is quit hosting Dots when the time is right, break free and launch an assault on Three Finger. The conflict lacks the grace of a practiced performance and is rough and filthy. After being struck, Dale responds, makes use of his surroundings, and is able to grab a weapon. Three Finger keeps moving forward, confident that even this man can be subdued by fear. He falls into the sea after Dale shoots. He doesn't examine the body. He is unable to determine whether the blow is final. He is aware that there are still others in the jungle, but none of them have the knowledge he has just acquired. So he grabs the weapons that are available and departs Dot at this very moment. Henry Rollins' presence alters the film's tone. Thus far, Wrong Turn 2 has exploited the participants' incapacity to discern between fact and fiction. That uncertainty is cleared up by Dale. For a few minutes, he's seen alone. Injured man who is encircled and chooses to turn the hunt around resembles an action movie mixed with a slasher. He finds his way to the family's home. He discovers the former Maynard, the petrol station worker already connected to the first wrong turn. The violence in the area doesn't appear to surprise the man. Maynard talks as Dale tries to tend to his wounds and keeps the rifle ready. He discusses the contamination that afflicted the local population, an abandoned paper mill, and industrial trash that was poured into the river. Generation after generation, the family's isolation was added to that harm. As a result, the sequel provides a clearer explanation than the original movie provided. The cannibals are more than simply myths associated with the mountain and the Forbidden Road. They are the outcome of two interdependent closures, a business that has contaminated the land and then left others to deal with the fallout, and a family community that proliferates within itself. For this reason, the factory is more than just a last scene. It is both the location where the family established its economy and the material source of the catastrophe. Buildings, cars, tools, garbage, and other items that society has abandoned are repurposed, and individuals. Maynard talks as though describing a personal tragedy. He may appear for a little moment to be only the elderly witness of a contamination that has been forgotten. He then discloses the blood tie. The monsters Dale is searching for are not alien to him. They are his kin. Since Three Finger and the others are his progeny, Maynard feels that the previous deaths are a transgression that needs to be made right. Remorse is not produced by information. Launches an assault. Maybe believing that Dale is now sufficiently weak, Maynard tries to hit him. Dale responds as quickly as someone who no longer wants to be apprehended. The battle takes place within the home, among the family's possessions and the remnants of the recent birth. Dale ultimately employs dynamite. He doesn't wait for a more thorough confession or attempt to arrest the elderly man. He ignites the bomb, puts it on himself, and turns to leave behind him. The home blows up. The sole character ready to reveal the family's beginnings disappears with Maynard, but his words are enough to alter the remainder of the movie. Dale now knows where to go: the paper factory, Additionally, he is aware that Three Finger may not be the only hunter remaining, and that the threat is more widespread than he initially believed. In the meantime, Nina eventually locates Jonesy, Amber, and Jake. She's filthy, upset, and nearly breathless when she arrives. She attempts to describe what she witnessed, including the birth, the family, the house, and Moraz's murder. For those who still think they are in a reality show, the words come out too fast and sound ridiculous. Amber observes her suspiciously. Jonesy searches for an answer that makes sense for the game. However, Jake recognizes that Nina is not acting when he sees the fear on her face, convinced that it was a resource left in the woods or a part of the challenge. The three of them discovered some already cooked beef and began eating it. Nina, a vegan who was already repulsed before learning the truth, stares at them, unable to comprehend how they could cease eating when Mara was dead. Jake looks down at what's in front of them. There is still a recognizable tattoo on the burnt skin. It was Kimberly's mark. A portion of the candidate's body had already been prepped for consumption. As the program waited 4 hours for a contestant who would never show up, the meat is dropped by Jake. At the same time, Amber and Jonesy realize that Nina is not in a panic, and that the filth and blood on her clothes are not part of the set design, and that they were tricked into eating the first victim without realizing it. That's where the competition finishes, not because Michael stopped recording, nor because Dale issued an order, but rather because the competitors realized that there is no longer a distinction between the challenge and death. After seeing Kimberly's tattoo, they must now go back to the caravan. And they will find that even the final line of communication has already been initiated. When they get to the proper location, in the family's possession, the caravan has vanished. Only ripped cables, tire marks, and items left on the ground remain at the location where the production had set up its control center. Amber examines the perimeter. Jonesy calls Em and Dale, as though a response may still be found in the trees, and Jake examines the track that the wheels have carved. Nina doesn't require any additional evidence. She witnessed Moraz's death and the family dragging the body away, and now she realizes that even the tools needed to remove them have been seized. Jones's initial response is to search for a non-cannibal answer. The caravan may have been moved by the workers. Perhaps Dale changed the test. Perhaps Michael is attempting to frighten them. Every theory endures just long enough for the silence to refute it. Nobody picks up the radio. Nobody shows up to congratulate them from behind a camera. Additionally, there is blood among the vehicle's tracks. Amber assumes leadership without stating it. She proves that the main road is too exposed, that the old paper mill can provide shelter, tools, or at least a phone, and that remaining motionless makes them easy targets. Nina recalls the building that was mentioned in the house's directions. Jake is in favor of the choice. For the first time since the game began, Jonesy is unprepared for a comeback. They departed. Fear has brought the group together, although their speed is still different. Amber advances as though the forest were a dangerous place that must be carefully traversed. Jake makes sure Nina can keep up with them by staying near her. Jonesy makes an effort to hide how frightened he is by the meat he consumed. Knowing that the family doesn't merely chase, Nina continues turning around. Instead, they watch, pick the best location, and wait for them to make a mistake. To incite confrontation. The reality show split the candidates into couples. They are brought together by the true threat, but it is too late. They can't trust what they see. They don't know how many attackers are left, and they don't know the terrain. Even a production-prepared hint could put them in danger. The family may even drag the victims to the paper mill via what appears to be a safe route. Then they hear sounds. They're not your typical footsteps. The sound of two bodies colliding is heard, along with a groan and movement amid the bushes. The four slow down and get close enough to tell brother apart from a woman. For a brief while, it appears that he's fighting Elena, and that she is still alive. An instant sense of optimism is sparked by the realization that saving her would entail getting at least one person back, demonstrating that not everything they have lost is irreversible. However, The figure pivots. A portion of Eleanor's face and hair are being worn by Sister as a mask. The harshness of the gesture is distinct from that of killing. Convinced that having control meant being desired, Eleanor had exploited her body and appearance as instruments. Sister uses that exact image to entice brother when she passes away. She reconstructs seduction using what she has ripped from the victim. She does not see it as a social game. The rivalry that began on the shore is thus taken to its most perverted conclusion in the movie. Sister attempted to become what she thought brother wanted to see. Rather than simply eliminating Eleanor, Nina lets out a scream. The escape resumes when brother and sister turn around. Amber responds first. Jake shoves Nina toward the trees as she confronts brother to stop him from getting to the others. Jonesy tries to assist Amber, but the terrain keeps them apart as the cannibals get closer with every second of resistance. Elegant strategy does not exist. Blows are delivered with whatever is available. Bodies fall and rise again, and branches are used to slow down. Nina doesn't check where she sets her foot as she runs. The earth underneath her collapses. She vanishes into a pit covered with branches and leaves, a trap that is too deep for her to escape by herself. She's taken aback by the impact. Glancing up, all she sees are the walls of the ground collapsing beneath her fingertips and a circle of sky. Gives Jake a call. Amber came next, then everybody who is able to hear it. The group has been dispersed by the combat above. Jonesy and Amber are able to escape together. Even if brother and sister are still near, Jake turns around when he sees that Nina is no longer pursuing them. This is the second time that someone has decided not to leave her. Mara had followed her out of Michael's emotional path, and now that he hears her voice coming from the earth, Jake distances himself from the easiest way out. He locates the pit and gets down on his knees at its edge. The ground gives way beneath Nina's feet as she tries to climb. Jake reaches out to her with a branch and then his arm. It's too far away. As sister gets closer, he's forced to lean nearly all the way, putting his back to the forest. For a brief moment, the movie focuses all of survival on a grip, Nina's hand slipping, Jake's hand refusing to let go, the weight of both dragging dirt into the pit. Nina cautions him, and he persists. She's lifted by Jake. Just when Nina crosses the edge, sister shows up. The cannibal is blocking the path, so the two are unable to go back toward Amber and Jonesy. They reach the river after running in the opposite direction. There is undoubtedly death behind them, but the water is swift, dark, and most likely tainted by the same discharges that Maynard informed Dale about. Jake leaps. After a brief period of hesitation, Nina follows him. They are pulled away from sister by the river. It's not an easy way out. They lose control of their body, drink water, and collide with rocks. However, the river eventually establishes a separation that the trees were unable to provide. They are worn out and split up from the other two when they eventually arrive at the coast. Jake shouts out to Jonesy and Amber, but their names are drowned out by the sound of the water. Joesy and Amber, on the other hand, are looking for assistance in a different way. Neither of them made an announcement about how their relationship had evolved. Initially, Amber thought Jonesy was a careless individual who couldn't take anything seriously. He responded to her severity with provocations, as though each command was an invitation to make jokes. Jonesy is now hurt, afraid, and compelled to put his trust in her. Amber, who might have thought of him as a burden, continues to support him. They think they have gained a few minutes when they arrive in a more open location. Jonesy makes a mistake. He is lifted off the ground by a rope that tightens around his ankle. He is suddenly left hanging upside down and helpless. Amber rushes in his direction. A second trap appears beneath her feet while she searches for the knot and attempts to cut the rope. She's pulled upward as well. The two hang next to each other while swinging between the trees. The circumstances suspended competitors, time constraints, and the necessity for cooperation almost have the ridiculousness of a television challenge intended to make viewers laugh. However, there is no safety system and no one to explain the regulations. In an attempt to stabilize their bodies and find something to use against the ropes, Amber and Jonesy cling to each other as tightly as they can. Pa and brother show up. Pa doesn't kill right away. He gives brother room, observes his positioning, and instructs him on how to combine the two inmates into a single target. A father and son are learning a lesson. The family teaches hunting in the same way that others would teach a trade, adjusting posture, pointing out the proper location, and waiting for the younger member to demonstrate comprehension. Amber notices the arrow. Jonesy notices it at the same time. They are unable to fall. They can't keep apart long enough. The boisterous youngster and the soldieress who couldn't stand him eventually cease being caricatures for the reality show in that last moment as they stay suspended. Near, they are two individuals who at least attempt to avoid taking the hit alone because they are aware that there is no way out. Let the arrow go. Brother. Both are pierced by the dart. As their bodies continue to move. The woodland becomes silent once more. Just as terror was starting to turn their animosity into trust, death brings them together. Through editing, the program aimed to create an intriguing relationship. A real one is produced by the forest and removes it before anyone can access it. Jake and Nina are unaware that they are the last ones remaining. They locate a trail that leads to the paper factory by following the river. The structure, which is bigger than the home and harder to understand, appears through the woods as a dark mass. The walls are corroded, the windows are broken, and the metal structures appear to have stood still for decades. However, there are indications of recent activity, such as footprints, relocated doors, and vehicle tracks. The factory was meant to be the location where civilization turned land into wealth and timber into a commodity. It changed after the closure. The machinery are still there, but their purpose has been inverted. They are no longer employed by a visible business with employees and documentation. They provide services to a family that has learned to coexist with the ruins of the contaminated industry. Nina wants to round the structure and head for a road. As the sun sets, Jake realizes that they are both too exhausted to navigate the woods in the dark once more. They may discover a car, a phone, and tools at the paper mill. They may locate the others as well. They come in. There is an echo with each stride. It's hard to determine if someone is pursuing them because of the sound of water seeping, metal moving in the wind, and ancient chains. Nina continues to be around Jake, but she insists that they must continue. After initially isolating her, her mistrust has evolved into a kind of clarity. Jake, however, still feels the need to look. Without evidence, he finds it difficult to accept that Amber, Jonesy, Dale, or even Michael might be dead. They discover time-preserved human remains in a room, the bones of a lady and a child who were unable to flee. Their presence connects the paper mill to a tale that goes beyond the murders of that day. However, it is unclear how long they have been there. Nina considers the baby she saw in the house as she examines the tiny body. In a setting where other women have already been buried, the family is still having children. They keep going until they reach a sizable area set aside for storage. The doors lead to an assortment of automobiles, trucks, and other vehicles. Some have recent damage, while others are shrouded in dust. The factory does not own them, preserved after their owners were turned into food. Those are the automobiles of the people who vanished along those highways. For Nina, the space is a body-free cemetery. Each vehicle symbolizes a person who stopped at the incorrect location, took a diversion, or asked for assistance. The family continuously feeds on what society loses on the periphery, rather than just existing outside of it. It integrates everything into its own area, including the vehicles, clothing, equipment, and even pictures of the victims. Jake recognizes the production caravan among the vehicles. It is present. The rear door is ajar. Michael's voice can be heard coming from the speakers, and the monitors inside are still on. Shattered by suffering. Jake is the first to ascend. He thinks Em is lurking in the center for a little while. He follows the screams to the control station after calling his name. He then examines the screens. Michael still broadcasts from the cameras he set up to make other people look amazing. He's restrained in a different chamber of the paper factory, one of the monitors. However, he's holding a knife in front of him. Michael begs, makes financial promises, and attempts to sound like a producer who can handle any circumstance. None of his offers are worth anything. The family does not want to be involved in your program. They do not want publicity, and they do not want a contract. Dad keeps him motionless. However, he draws the sword nearer to the neck by grabbing the hair. Jake tries to locate the camera, but all he can see on the display are bits and pieces, such as filthy walls, a table, and moving bodies. From outside, Nina calls him. He is unable to reply. The blade comes down in front of the camera. Michael is beheaded. He had been thinking all day that he could control people with the camera. Ultimately, one of his devices records his demise without editing or an audience. He is unable to stop the recording, select the angle, or get rid of his weaknesses. Even when his body stops moving, the vision persists. Distressed, Jake leaves the caravan. He informs Nina that Emma's passed away and that they must take one of the cars. She investigates the cabins, looks for the keys, and pushes a door. The car doesn't start. The cars have been carefully maintained by the family so that none can be utilized as a means of escape. There's a metallic sound behind them. Nina pivots. The sister has come into the warehouse. Pan emerges from a different direction. The paper mill was not an accidental haven. All the footprints led to this location, where the family returned with their means, their prey, and what was left of their lives. Jake and Nina thought they were getting closer to a chance at salvation as they crossed the woods, and they entered the very middle of the hunt. They already have Paul behind them. Sister obstructs Jake's attempt to shove Nina in the direction of one of the autos. The two move between the cars for a brief moment, as though the garage may yet provide a secret route. The caravan they had sought for rescue is now simply another cage. Every door is barred, and every hallway terminates into a metal wall. Jake picks up a tool that was dropped to the ground. Nina searches for a weapon to protect herself. Pa advances slowly. The family is aware of their limited options. Nina is attacked by her sister. When Jake steps in, he gets struck from behind. The floor rises toward his face. The metal slips from his grasp, and the last thing he sees is Nina being pulled away while she keeps calling. The paper mill then goes dark. Nina is not in the garage when she comes to, constricted by barbed wire that binds her wrists and keeps her from moving her torso without hurting herself. She's strapped to a chair. There is a set table in front of her. Instead of using spotless plates or identifiable food, the family uses bowls, knives, and parts that were recovered from many kitchens. The room's walls are adorned with items that were stolen from the victims, giving the impression that every individual who went into the woods left behind a tiny piece of their lives to adorn that industrial home. Jake is tied up with his arms raised above his head and dangling a short distance away. He can't get to her, but he's cognizant. He stretches the ropes, searches for a weak spot, and tries to wiggle away. Pa notices every movement and comes over to remind him of his position in the room by striking him. Nina says his name. Glancing up, Jake tells her to wait. She can see by his tone that he doesn't have a plan. But those words are the only thing in the paper mill that still has a connection to the original world. The family's rules apply to everything else. However, she comes in with the baby. Brother and sister take a seat. Dad sits down at the head of the table. For a brief period, the scene appears to be a family dinner. The parents, the kids, the food being distributed, and the repeating movements of individuals who have carried out that ritual numerous times. The youngster is positioned next to the mother. This very normalcy is what makes it intolerable. They don't believe they're accomplishing anything noteworthy. After hunting and returning with their prey, they are now sharing a meal. This is where the staging picks up speed. The film has scattered the action around traps, water, roots, and camera footage up until the capture. Joe Lynch now confines everything to a small area, lights the table as the focal point of a house, and allows the terror to emerge over time. The scene blatantly evokes the country cannibal film tradition and, Most importantly, those dinners in which a hideous family mimics the motions of a typical family. The distinction is that Nina isn't just viewed as a potential victim. Against her will, she must remain present, observe, and take part. By applying pressure to the competitors, the reality program sought to elicit an honest confession. The family accomplishes the same exposure by removing any barrier between spectator and spectacle. Additionally, Jake loses the role that was given to him. He was the athlete who was expected to use his strength and stamina to solve difficulties. He can't push, run, or shield Nina while hanging from the ceiling. All he can do is keep talking to her, stay in touch, and make sure she doesn't think she's alone. The two are not abruptly transformed into the ideal romantic couple in the movie. They became closer as a result of a number of sensible choices. He went back to the hole, she stayed with him after the river, and now they are both attempting to take on some of each other's dread. People Nina knew are seated at the table. She can identify clothing, accessories, and bits of the day that began on set, but she is unable to distinguish anything else. For the purpose of introductions, the reality program had given each competitor a basic identity. The family has since removed such labels as well. The skateboarder, the soldier, the producer, and the model are all gone. Everybody has been reduced to the same thing. However, he gets a bite ready and approaches Nina. She looks away. The thread presses closer to the skin. The family persists until Nina is compelled to open her mouth, with sister grabbing her and pa holding her face. Jake pulls the ropes till they pain and pleads for her to be left alone, but he is unable to descend. What Nina must swallow is not the only factor influencing the scene's violence. It depends on the goal to include her in the ritual and compel her to briefly explain the reasoning behind her captor's actions. Nina does her hardest to resist. She turns away, spits, and refuses to give them the satisfaction of witnessing her surrender. Her veganism initially appeared to be a feature intended to set her apart from the other competitors. She comes back here with a new weight. The remains of their comrades must be faced by the person who refused to eat meat. The movie turns a trait that the reality program uses as a convenient name into the focal point of its most intense humiliation. Jake is still looking for an answer. He looks at the nuts, how far they are from the ground, and where they are. He looks for Nina's eyes and attempts to convince her that she must buy time. However, Pa sees him. He moves in, strikes him with the blade, and removes a chunk of flesh from his side, not enough to kill him right away, but enough to demonstrate that the meal can continue while the victim is still alive. Jake lets out a scream. However, he takes the piece and consumes it. In his arms, the baby wriggles. Sister and brother mimic the adults, giggle, and push each other. In addition to providing food, the family teaches the child what it means to be a part of that community. Here, the continuity that birth promised takes on tangible reality. The same cycle of hunting, eating, and isolation that has given rise to all previous generations is presented to a new one. However, someone entered the paper mill outside the chamber without being discovered. Dale went to the facility by following the signs the caravan had left behind. He takes the dynamite that was found in Maynard's home, along with the bow and arrows. Every movement is slowed by the wounds, yet they don't stop him. He moves toward the buildings, staying out of the open spaces, hears the family's sounds, and finds the room where the inmates are. He might try to enter directly. It would be quicker, and most likely pointless. Dale has enough fighting experience to realize that the family must first be divided in order to release Jake and Nina, so he uses what he has to create a diversion. After preparing the arrows, tying the explosives, and measuring the distances, he enters the garage. He purposefully slashes his arm, leaving bloodstains on the floor. Doors and cars. Fear, noise, and frailty led the family to chase everyone away. Dale gives them precisely similar cues, but this time the blood isn't that of a victim running around aimlessly. The trail is sketched. Dinner is interrupted by a disturbance. Brother looks up. His sister goes after him. After listening, Pa lets the two kids go check The hunt turns into schooling once more. Pa lets them pursue the man they think is hurt on their own after witnessing them cooperate in the woods. Brother grabs a weapon. Sister remains near him. They arrive at the garage after crossing the corridor. Dale shifts between the vehicles. The first and second signs of blood are discovered by the two. Convinced that the prey is weakening, brother smiles. Sister looks more warily at the shadows. They follow the evidence of scores of past victims as they pass through the stolen cars. Dale finds a new haven in every vehicle. Every surface obscures the direction from which it may attack by reflecting a portion of its movement. Brother arrives to what appears to be the end of the track, from the opposite side of the garage. Dale emerges and fires an arrow. Brother is wounded in the back by the shot. When sister notices the dynamite fastened to the pole, she rushes in his direction. The fuse is already lit when she tries to rip it away. He doesn't grasp the mechanism fast enough. She continues to tug, and the brother becomes irritated, and they are both engulfed by the blast. The paper mill is filled with the sound of the raw dot. Ma cradles the kid in the dining room. Pa rises and bolts for the garage. For the first time, an uncontrollable event disrupts the family ritual. They had been in charge of choosing which body to bring home, who to separate, and when to arrive up until that point. Dale killed two sons in the same location where they stored the hunting trophies, turning their area into a trap. He doesn't hold off on seeing Pa. He dashes into the space and gets to Nina. He carefully cuts the barbed wire so as not to injure her further. Dale has seen Jake, but she tries to talk about where he is. He tells her to remain upright and proceeds to the ropes that are suspending the boy. When Jake is let free, he collapses to his knees. Dale must raise him by the arm because the wound on his side causes him to bend over. There's not enough time to treat it. He instructs them both to flee the complex by pointing to a side exit. Nina stays put for a while before she even raises the question. He looks at her and knows what she's asking. At least not yet. He won't accompany them. Pa and Ma need to be slowed down by someone. They had to be stopped from entering the hallway by someone. He doesn't portray the decision as a sacrifice. He doesn't express thanks or make a speech. He shoves them in the direction of the door and picks up the bow again. He had urged the participants to demonstrate their ability to survive at the end of the world at the start of the day. His last challenge is no longer about rescuing himself. It involves giving to individuals the opportunity that his program has got them this far. Jake and Nina walk into the corridor. Pa shows up behind them. The bow already pulled. Dale is struck in the back by the first arrow. The power of the hit causes his body to advance a step, but he stays upright. He pivots and keeps Pa away from the door. He's struck by a second arrow. Dale is still standing, hurt, and nearly disbelieving that the man in front of him still doesn't realize how much force it will take to stop him. Pa gets ready for another shot. He's forced to focus on her because Dale provokes him. Nina and Jake get farther apart with each passing second. Although the Colonel is no longer able to win the fight, he may still choose how long it will take for him to lose. However, he brings his children's suffering with him as he enters the garage. He knows what happened without having to see the bodies. He's holding the barbed wire that the victims were imprisoned by the family. He comes up behind Dale and tosses it around his neck. Dale tries to break free by grabbing the thread. He can't pull without making the grip worse thanks to the spikes. Mo grabs one end as Pa clutches the other. They cling to each other, fighting to make it feasible for someone else. The man who made survival a television slogan perishes. The sound behind her is audible to Nina. Jake pulls her in the direction of the exit, even though she wants to go back. She knows that if she stopped, Dale's recent actions would be undone. She bolts. For the first time, she senses open air in front of her as she passes through a door, ascends a staircase, and arrives outside the paper mill. Jake continues to follow her, till the walkway is divided by a corridor. Nina seizes the opportunity to go outside. Jake walks into the other one, perplexed by the darkness and the pain. Above a massive machine designed to swallow wood, an industrial light comes on as he takes a few steps and calls her name. After that, the door shuts behind him. After him, the door shuts. Jake turns around and looks for the hallway he came from, but the shredder takes up nearly the whole space in front of him. It is a device designed to collect logs, disintegrate them, and turn them into material that can be worked. The blades don't differentiate what they get: meat, clothing, wood. The same motion is used to drag everything along. Jake can't move as fast as he used to because of the cut on his side. The cut from dinner is reopened with each step, and the blood makes it easier to track him. Paul runs out of the shadows. Jake makes an effort to use his remaining strength. He strikes him, attempts to move past him, and searches for the way out. But Pa is more familiar with that area than he is. He seizes him, presses him up against the building, and pulls him in the direction of the machine's mouth. The competitor posing as the group's athlete has reached the most basic and horrible test imaginable. Withstanding an untiring force, Nina bolts out of the building. The jungle is in front of her. She has passed through the door, and for the first time since Moreau's death, nobody is in her way. She could go on. To give her those seconds, Dale gave his life. She was told to leave by Jake. She's told not to return to the paper mill by every fundamental survival rule. She then recognizes that Jake is not following her. She gives him a call. No response. Nina remains motionless long enough to hear her screams emanating from within. She understands that she has chosen the incorrect passage. She still has a chance to get out, but doing so will immediately cost her the one person who had returned to save her when she was stuck in the pit. Nina had stated at the start of the reality show that she wasn't there to build relationships. The show was a job. The others were rivals, and the only motivation to put up with them was the prize. She had some protection in that position. Nobody can betray you if no one counts, and no loss can compel you to take chances. That defense was gradually destroyed by the trees. Mara followed her inside the house. She was lifted off the ground by Jake. Dale created a way for her to go outside. Now, to survive alone would be to act as though nothing had been left behind by all those choices. Nina pivots. She goes back to the paper mill. He believes he is unbeatable. Therefore he doesn't return. He returns without military training and without Jake's physical prowess, nevertheless overcome with terror. The only thing to his favor is that Pa already thinks she's far away. Convinced that he has the last victim, he's preoccupied with the boy. Nina is able to watch without being noticed for the first time. Just as Pa is attempting to force Jake into the shredder, she enters the room. Nina walks in and attacks. The onslaught upsets the equilibrium. Pa turns around. Jake escapes the blades, and Moore enters the room, lured by the commotion. Every incorrect move could result in death, since the battle revolves around the logs and machine controls. Nina turns to Ma. Jake betrays his father. They don't engage in combat like two heroes who have just received training. They battle like worn-out individuals who have realized one crucial fact: if they are separated, they will be taken one by one. If they band together, they can at least make Ma and Pa part ways. Pa is pushed in the direction of the mechanism by Jake. The machine briefly captures the cannibal, but Ma steps in and rescues him before he is fully pulled inside. Even in the middle of the mayhem, the family keeps defending one another. Nina and Jake are unable to resolve their conflict with a single gesture because of the same connection that made them so successful in the search. However, he picks up a large club and points it toward Jake. Pa has blocked Nina. She reacts in the most natural way possible, biting his neck because she's unable to break away with force. There is a passionate and sardonic quality to the motion. The family has used other individuals as food throughout the movie. A victim now reclaims the space necessary for survival by using their teeth. Pa pulls back. The log control panel is visible to Nina. However, she lifts the weapon above Jake, prepared to hit him. He's close to his father. When Nina gets to the control, she turns it on. A big log begins to move. Ma and Pa are knocked off balance when the wood strikes them as the machine moves it along the processing line. The two are pulled in the direction of the shredder's mouth. They make an effort to resist, using the same force that was used to Jake. but the mechanism persists. Together, the blades grab hold of them. The heirs are eaten by the paper mill. It's brutally symmetrical. The family's upbringing was contaminated by the plant's emissions. Ma and Pa are destroyed by the building's remaining equipment decades later. Nothing that occurs there can be considered a type of clear justice. The hunters are reduced in the same manner that the victims were reduced in this land, which returns to the family of origin. Nina and Jake stand motionless as the commotion subsides. The number of surviving cannibals is unknown to them. They haven't witnessed Three Fingers' demise. The child's location is unknown to them. However, they are unable to inspect every chamber. Nina is almost at her limit, and Jake is bleeding blood. Leaving before someone else is drawn in by the silence is the only option. Once more, they cross the garage. These days, the pilfered vehicles don't just look like awards. One of these might end up being the escape path that earlier victims were denied. After Nina looks through the belongings left in the caravan and Jake tries a door, they eventually locate Kimberly's sports vehicle. The movement that started in the opening scene is concluded by the vehicle selection. When Kimberly got to that road, she was certain that the automobile, the phone, and her celebrity kept her apart from the surroundings. Her car wound up in the family's collection after she was slain before arriving at the set. Jake and Nina board that same car to finish the trip. She was unable to. The engine ignites. Nina and Jake finally have a way to impose a direction after spending hours following other people's pathways. They discover the road after crossing the warehouse and arriving at the exit. Neither of them rejoices when the paper mill recedes. The crew members are dead, along with Dale, Mara, Amber, Jonesy, Elena, Michael, and Kimberly. There won't be a winner of the reality program. There will be two survivors of an unnecessary trial. Jake gives Nina a look. Her gaze remains fixed on the road. There is no need for a statement between them. Their actions, he returning to the pit, she returning to the shredder, have already defined their bond in the movie. They each rejected the opportunity to save themselves by abandoning the other. The most genuine connection is born without promise and without an audience in a narrative dominated by deformed families, relationships utilized for visibility, and participants made into TV types. Beyond the trees, Kimberly's automobile vanishes. It might be the end. However, wrong turn to prevents the road from seeming completely unrestricted. Once more, the woodland is silent. Someone is caring for the newborn beside the water. The baby bottle is held by a malformed hand. Both the fall into the river and Dale's blow were avoided by Three Finger, since the outcome is already in front of him. He doesn't need to know everything that transpired in the paper mill. However, Maynard has vanished. Brother and sister have blown up, and Ma and Pa are dead. However, the familial line continues. The youngster is taken by Three Finger and given the tainted fluids from the surroundings that caused the mutations. He then extends a human finger to him. The complete conclusion is contained in the gesture. The newborn inherits both cannibalism and industrial contamination at the same time. One originates from the outside world, which has abandoned the area and deposited its rubbish. The other originates from within, from a community that has made seclusion a legal requirement. Feeding a child is only one aspect of Three Finger. He's reconstructing the cycle. Because of this, Nina and Jake's victory is genuine but constrained. They took control of a road, got away from the paper factory, and vanquished Ma and Pa. They did not eradicate the last surviving. They did not clean up the pollutants, and they did not restore the forest. As a result, the connotation of the title dead end extends beyond the actual dead end. Every effort to come to a definitive conclusion comes across something that persists below the surface. The reality program comes to an end. No. The family. In the 2003 movie, Three Finger was already a continuity element, and his last appearance unquestionably makes him the face of the narrative. The roads may go to a house, a paper mill, or another part of West Virginia. The other members may pass away. The victim groups may shift. He's still there. He's more of a presence that can endure the narrative than a character created via words and motivations. In contrast, the child opens up a new path. It goes beyond the mere mechanical promise of a follow-up. It is evidence that a family can make up for what it loses. There was no parenthesis added to the birth that Mara and Nina witnessed in order to raise the excess. It was the movie's actual countdown. The forest would generate another hunter as long as that newborn survived and someone continued to raise it. Even if all the adults were eliminated while driving, Nina and Jake are unable to be aware of all of this for them. The sound of the engine, the bleeding wound, and the need for assistance mark the conclusion of the story. They don't have time to explain what transpired. We don't see paramedics or police showing up to put things back in order. They are left alive, but still entangled in the fallout when the movie ends. The forest would be reduced to a finished incident if there was a full return to normalcy. The three-finger scenario affirms the opposite. Although the hunt continues in that area, normalcy can return elsewhere. This is the exact reason why Wrong Turn opted for a more expansive closing image, rather than just confrontation. Ma and Pa are killed by the grinder, yet their memory endures. A bottle is placed in front of a child's mouth. There's no more industrial noise. There's still the sound of someone eating. Furthermore, Three Fingers Laugh doesn't simply end the narrative when the titles roll. It signifies the moment when this second chapter develops its own individuality and ceases to be a careful sequel. The 2003 film Wrong Turn focused on three predators that were nearly always seen from the outside, a concealed dwelling, and a few wayward travelers. Everything is expanded in Dead End, a new family, a birth, an industrial hub, a television team, and a group that enters the forest with the appearance of having already transformed it into a spectacle are all added. The second movie employs excess as its vocabulary, pushes harder, and shows more than the first, which aimed to create tension by not knowing what was behind the trees. This decision might have reduced the sequel to a series of ever more complex fatalities. Rather, the many tones are held together by the reality structure. Dale's action, the horror of the family, the satire of television, and the black comedy all revolve around the same question. What happens to a person when the role that the cameras have assigned them is no longer necessary? Kimberly is no longer the famous person. The producer is no longer Mara. Jake is no longer just the athlete. Nina is no longer the antisocial competitor. Jonesy is no longer the boisterous man. Elena is no longer the body to flaunt. And Amber is no longer just the soldier. The introductions are stripped away by the forest, and one needs go back to how Joe Lynch reacted to this sequel in order to comprehend why a movie meant for the domestic market is able to do so with such vigor, and the liberty he discovered just within his boundaries, and the liberty he discovered inside his bounds, with a more costly production, Stan Winston's involvement, and a promise centered around a new collection of recognizable monsters. Wrong Turn was still a horror movie meant for theaters when it was released in 2003. Although the outcome isn't a major film office hit, it receives enough attention to warrant a sequel. The only one that deviates from this course is the sequel. The decision is made in the home market, where a movie can be more affordable, quickly reach fans, and transform a popular title into the start of a series. This choice might have resulted in a condensed version of the first chapter. Joe Lynch makes the opposite decision. His first feature picture, Wrong Turn 2, Dead End, was scripted by Tori Meyer and Allception and filmed in Vancouver with an estimated budget of about $4 million. The production size is smaller than that of its predecessor, and since the audience is already familiar with Three Fingers and the existence of malformed cannibals in the woods, the picture cannot be built around complete surprise. The question of who is attacking cannot sustain the tension for very long. It must stem from the manner, timing, and intensity of the sequel's employment of that threat. Lynch has already replied with Kimberly. One of the most vivid recollections of the first movies intended to be challenged by the concept of the initial killing. The axe that hit Carly there and severed the top of her head from her body set the tone for the story right away. Here, before reality really starts, the fresh victim is split vertically in full daylight. It's an almost competitive statement. The sequel doesn't claim to be able to silently replicate what the audience remembers. It takes it and turns it into a macabre comedy that establishes the tone for all that comes after. But the volume of blood is not the primary distinction. It's the joy with which the movie acknowledges that it is a follow-up. The sobriety of the first chapter is not replicated. In Dead End, it doesn't treat each character as though they were joining a dramatic drama and doesn't conceal its budget beneath an overly serious tone. It portrays itself as a fast-paced, violent horror that is conscious of the tradition to which it belongs. It makes use of stark imagery, black humor, broadly sketched characters, and a television format that can support each new conflict. The decision that keeps all these elements together is reality. The jargon of competitive television is already well known. In 2007, the unfriendly outsider, the aggressive woman, the sporty boy, the contender selected for her body, the producer seeking scandal, and the authoritative presenter, all instantly recognized by the audience. The movie doesn't need to take 30 minutes to explain why 6 strangers wind themselves in a forest and why they keep following risky directions. They're there because they signed a contract. They want money or attention, and they think everything has been planned. Additionally, the idea resolves a well-known slasher issue. When characters disregard clear indicators, the audience typically begins to question why they don't go away. The era has a purpose that is incorporated into the world in Dead End. The purpose of bringing the contestants into the woods was to trick them. They anticipate manufactured sounds, altered routes, physical obstacles, and unseen actors. Even actual risk may appear to be a choice made during manufacturing. Their ignorance is not the only reason for their naivete. It has been expertly prepared. From one side of the screen, M takes advantage of this trust. On the other side, the family takes use of it. As a result, the editing can move from the control center to the home, from the candidates seen via the lenses to the cannibals who watch without the aid of technology. The forest continues to create blind areas, but the cameras give the crew the impression that they own the area. The program loses part of its authority each time a person moves out of frame or a display goes dark. In the end, Michael passes away in front of the system that was meant to give him power over others, and the caravan is stolen. The film is more condensed as a result of this reversal than its deviations would imply. It almost seems like a television satire in the first section. Dale's segment is structured like an action film. The house pushes the narrative in the direction of familial dread. Dinner descends into the macabre. The conclusion is changed into an industrial conflict by the shredder. They all center on the same loss of control, even though they are in various registers. Before determining what is left, the forest removes each character's prepared role. Dale is still disciplined. Henry Rollins gives the movie a presence that doesn't require any explanation. Colonel Murphy appears to have lived a life before to the reality program based on the manner he stands in front of the camera. Even before the character engages in combat, he's portrayed in the play as the embodiment of authenticity, the person who can make a regulated game appear powerless. That same realism becomes genuinely helpful when the game fails. Making him invulnerable would have been the risk. In contrast, Dead End gives him skill, but not salvation. After eluding capture, Dale questions Maynard, burns the house, lays the trap for brother and sister, and releases Jake and Nina. Every action demonstrates that he is more adept at responding than the rest. However, the injuries mount. It doesn't develop into a machine that can eradicate the whole family. Its effectiveness is based on altering the likelihood that the people will survive, and the barbed wire around the neck stops its path without diminishing its power. Nina takes a different route. Erica Leerhsen does not approach the movie with the conventional survivor persona intended to direct the viewer. Nina gets agitated, rejects Jake, hates the program, and makes an effort to keep her distance. She may seem the least likely to become the emotional focal point when compared to Kimberly, Elena, or even Amber. That's the exact reason her makeover is effective. He doesn't have to develop his physical strength. He has to acknowledge that his relationships with other people more than just a weakness. This evolution is prepared by the structure through meaning-changing repeats. Nina follows Mara as she departs off the trail. Jake retreats as Nina tumbles into the hole. Dale sets them both free and continues to battle. When Nina gets outside, she decides to go back for Jake. Every step poses the same question to a new person. Should you waste time waiting for someone who could slow you down? Or do you continue on your own? Those who make it to the end of the reality show rewarded. Those that go back rewarded in the movie. Texas Battle's character Jake completes this system since his generosity is not made public. He first exhibits every trait that makes a competitor appear to be the physical favorite, including football experience, self-assurance, and the capacity to overcome obstacles. However, his pivotal moments are independent of strength. They require attention. He hears Nina's voice in the hole, believes her when others look for comforting reasons, and won't abandon her underground. Before they pass away. Jonesy and Amber also undergo a minor metamorphosis. They could have served only as comedic relief in the movie. He's loud, and she's stiff. The production of the reality show obviously intended for the pair to cause conflict, but in the woods, animosity fades and cooperation becomes more important. They are still two different persons, yet they take the same blow at the same time because of the trap that brings them together. Although the arrow that pierces them is extreme, it also acts as the pairing's dramatic finale. Mara is given less screen time, yet one of the harshest criticisms in the movie is found in her death. She should be more aware of the deceit than the competitors as she works behind the television camera. He remains susceptible to Michael's personal manipulation. In order to preserve a relationship he views as disposable, he consents to take Kimberly's place, enters the game, and forfeits his professional security. When he finally makes the decision to go, his freedom is cut short by Pal's axe. Instead of giving her retribution against Michael, the movie gives them both different ends, but they are connected by the fact that the production has taken them to the point where the family would devour them. Conversely, Elena is placed within the gaze's circuit. Her attention is promised by the reality show. Michael says he will give her more room. From the trees, brother observes her. When sister notices that look, she responds. Eleanor's face turns into a mask after the murder, a hideous attempt to take control of the image that appeared to give her strength. The fact that it punishes more than just a shallow character makes it one of the sequel's strongest concepts. It demonstrates how easily the picture can get detached from the person and be utilized by another person, because Lynch does not attempt to make the competitors into psychologically sophisticated characters beyond what is required. All of this is still understandable even when the movie picks up speed. He clarifies them, gives nearly everyone a decision that reveals something, and then lets the narrative proceed. With a vast cast, a whole family to introduce, and 2 lines of action that must merge at the paper mill, it is a crucial discipline for a horror movie that is little over 90 minutes long. Therefore, pressure rather than subtle elegance is how the directive operates. The camera moves into unclean areas, gets close to the effects, and lets the photos have depth. Instead of being portrayed as a lovely setting, the forest is shown as a surface full of blind spots, obstructions, and potentially narrow passageways. The characters are confined to low chambers by the home. The paper mill expands the scope, but metal, chains, automobiles, and machines cover every available space. There is no freedom, even in the presence of space. To sustain this emotion, physical impacts are necessary. The issue is still in front of the actors. Even if the blood is exaggerated and the bodies are shredded with a logic that borders on noir comedy, a universe that would otherwise run the risk of becoming a joke is made credible by the weight of a prosthesis, the resistance of a wire, the contact with the mud, and the manner a victim is pulled. Excess is effective, because it contains substance. The same thing is done with sound in Bear McCreary's music. The score employs violins, banjos, guitars, accordions, washboards, and other instruments associated with rural music, then distorts them to produce what the composer has described as a kind of hellish bluegrass, rather than depending only on the more conventional orchestral language of horror. Because it takes an instantly identifiable regional identity and runs it through the film's speed, it's an ideal pick for Dead End. The banjo does not indicate that we are in a rural area. It turns the landscape into a machine. The violin can be used as a lament or a blade. Plucked strings can quicken the hunt, and spontaneous percussion can give the impression that the family is making music out of the very items they have recovered from the earth. The excessive tone is not seen from a safe location by the soundtrack. It enters the game, embraces the dark humor, and keeps the suspense high. At this point, the production constraints cease to be perceived as a shortcoming. A larger scale, additional habitats, and more days might have been possible with a larger budget. Conversely, Dead End finds its identity in focus. The house, the paper factory, the caravan, the barbed wire, the shredder, the bluegrass tune, Rollins' presence, and Nina's antagonistic visage are just a few of the primary locations, a closed group, a familiar threat, and a brief duration that push each department to select a strong sign. The movie doesn't attempt to appear more costly than it actually is. It makes an effort to appear more alive. And it's because of this enthusiasm that Wrong Turn 2 became more than just the second title on the packaging. Despite the fact that there are a lot of sequels produced for the domestic market, when it gets to viewers in October 2007, they react in a way that reveals something surprising. The series hasn't just kept going. It has found the tone that could leave a lasting impression. The show didn't simply go on ... It found the tone that may leave a lasting impression. The response of Wrong Turn 2, Dead End deviates from the typical outcome of direct-to-home market sequels, particularly in the 2000s. That kind of release is sometimes seen as a downgrade, less funding, less ambition, a less expensive version of the movie with the previous number. Dead End shows up with every requirement needed to validate the prejudice. It uses fewer resources, does not go back to theaters, and lacks the actors of the first chapter. However, a large portion of the genre critique acknowledges right away that Joe Lynch is not in charge of a brand. He is expressing his voice through the brand. Positive reviewers don't act as though the movie reimagines the slasher. It's a crucial distinction. The group being eliminated one by one, the forced supper, or the cannibal house's complete originality, not what give the sequel its strength. Decades of horror film reflected in those pictures. The way Lynch organizes, speeds up, and moves through them with a passion that never degrades the genre is rewarded. Dead End is aware of the films it originates from. He doesn't make an effort to cover them up with a more distinguished tone. They serve as fuel for him. Dread Central, who has already been in close proximity to the project during a set visit, embraces it as the work of a filmmaker who is intimately familiar with the horror audience. According to the evaluation, there is a person behind the camera who is aware of rhythm, excess, and group enjoyment, but there isn't a brand new type of dread that hasn't been seen before. A love letter to the genre etched in blood. The DVD review also characterizes the movie as an experience to be shared with friends. It's a vibrant method of determining Dead End's actual level of success. The sequel doesn't ask viewers to see it from a distance. It wants acclaim, responses, disdain, and anxious laughing all at one place. The project's perception is further altered by the transit through festivals. At the Sitges Festival, where horror is seen as cinema other than merely shelf goods, a title that has been prepared for DVD is allowed. This frame highlights the care concealed beneath Dead End's filthy exterior, rather than changing it into a separate piece of art. The audience can identify a phrase, chuckle at the excess, and then instantly stiffen at a fresh death, all of which contribute to the experience. Even though its primary distribution audiences to see it in their living rooms at home, The movie is designed for that involvement. At this point, the domestic market ceases to be merely a constraint. The unclassified version does not need to pursue the same measure as a large theatrical release in order to display more explicit effects. The image of a project targeted specifically at devotees is further reinforced by the supplementary DVD content, which includes commentary, behind-the-scenes materials, and cast interviews. Lynch acts as a viewer who has been given the chance to create the sequel he would have wanted to rent, rather than coming in from the outside to employ fear. Dead End's ability to deal with lousy taste without feigning superiority can also be explained by this connection to the supporters. Despite the extravagant imagery, the movie does not make fun of fans of the genre. The roles, the archetypes, and the almost ritualistic yearning to see how far the new chapter will dare to go make it laugh with them. Flaws are not eliminated by complicity. It does, however, make the objective plain, and a horror movie that is aware of its purpose is better able to withstand simplistic dialogue or a hastily drawn characters than a more sophisticated movie that is unsure of the mood it wants to evoke. This agreement is also accepted by the cast. Nobody performs the material in a way that requires an apology for its character. While the family members mostly work with posture, movement, and sound, Rollins adds weight, Leerhsen adds friction, and Texas Battle adds a slow humanity. The performances don't aim for consistency, because they both know when to push and when to allow an object, a wound, or a quiet finish the action. They meet in the same tone. Everybody reacts differently. Some people think the competitors are still too much like caricatures from reality shows. The humor can diffuse the tension, and the emphasis on the consequences runs the risk of turning danger into a game of tricks. Michael and Eleanor's actions appear to be designed to lead them swiftly to punishment. The second chapter may seem like a loss to those who were hoping for the comparatively more subdued intensity of the 2003 movie, because the cannibals are depicted more, have an almost hideous family life, and cease to exist only as glimpsed figures among the trees. However, what turns off some viewers attracts others. Dead End is the only chapter in the series to have a good critical rating. According to Rotten Tomatoes, which ranks it among the best-reviewed horror sequels, the statistics do not imply that everyone enjoys the movie, nor do they dispel concerns about the extravagance or the writing. It suggests something more intriguing. The second chapter has succeeded in setting itself out as a cinematic object, not only a product for completists. Within a series that is frequently evaluated based on its violence and the steady depletion of resources, the domestic market's commercial outcome further demonstrates the rationality of Fox's decision. Dead End, which was produced on a smaller budget than the first movie, brings in roughly $9 million from home video sales in the United States. At the time, Joe Lynch would have remembered that outcome and a record for a studio direct-to-video title. As a result, the title's Dead End becomes the industrial situation's reverse. The paper factory is where the character's journey comes to a conclusion. That identical paper factory establishes a manufacturing lane that can last 4 years for the proprietors of Wrong Turn. Lynch is asked to come up with another chapter by the studio. His plan makes no attempt to alter reality. Imagine the rest of the family storming the police station to liberate Three Finger after he has been arrested and brought there. It would have been a siege movie, a version that may have moved the story from the forest to a walled building and changed the cannibal from an unseen predator to a disputed prisoner. According to the theory, Lynch knew that maintaining Three Finger, but altering the storyline would be the best course of action. Next is the suggested budget. The sum would have been around half of what Dead End was already given. Lynch declines. The choice reveals a lot about the future course of the series. Although the second movie demonstrates that a smaller production may have vitality and personality, the studio interprets the success only as evidence that the brand can withstand additional shrinking. The pursuit of efficiency takes the place of creative risk. Declan O'Brien is the director of Wrong Turn 3, Left 4 Dead, which debuted in 2009. O'Brien then moves to chapters into the past in Wrong Turn 4, Bloody Beginnings, and Wrong Turn 5, Bloodlines, in order to reuse the family and preserve characters that had already been removed from the main chronology. Last Resort, the 6th movie, is still showing at home. Finally, Wrong Turn was revived in 2021 with a new threat and a reimagining of the concept of an isolated society. Dead End is still a challenging point to duplicate in the ongoing narrative. The most obvious components, the brutal killings, the cannibals, the traps, and the need for physical humiliation, remain in the following chapters. The mechanism that provided those elements with direction is the most easily lost. Violence is not the only thing in the second movie. It conflicts with reality, the notion of manufactured authenticity, and a paper mill that links the family's current situation to an earlier industrial harm. Every extreme feat originates from a framework that alludes to something. Before Kimberly can become the show star, she's killed. When Mara realizes that Michael doesn't value the connection for which she consented to expose herself, she passes away. Sister practically wears Eleanor's image, which she no longer controls. The cameras he installed for other people's usage make Michael happy. After being intentionally partnered by the producers, Amber and Jonesy are brought together by the same arrow. Dale ends the apocalyptic simulation and applies his knowledge to save to competitors only when they defy the basic principle of individual competitiveness. Do Jake and Nina prevail? The characters are not profound in the sense of a psychological drama because of this accuracy. They become useful in the most horrifying way. They enter wearing a blatant social mask, are subjected to pressure designed to undermine that disguise, and make or fail to make a decision that determines their destiny. Subtraction was the main focus of the first Wrong Turn. When Chris and Jesse ventured into an unfamiliar area, they saw abandoned cars, a mysterious house, and malformed guys who appeared to be the product of a local folktale. The fact that the civilized world was both close enough to be recalled and far enough away to be powerless to intervene was the source of the terror. Although the cannibals had names and traits, they weren't given much attention in the movie. The victims saw them as a threat. They enter the house through Dead End. It depicts the birth, the meal, the children's schooling, the bond between the brother and sister, and the suffering of the parents when the family is affected. It doesn't beg for pity. It provides a rationale that family views its own cycle as normal and views outsiders as intruders. It does not see itself as a departure from the usual. The monsters are less enigmatic as a result of the decision, but they are better suited to support a series. They can now have future generations, ancient grudges, new members, and genealogies. Three Finger turns into the ideal bridge. He was the most recognizable and emotive of the three in the first movie. In the second, he escapes Dale, loses nearly every member of his family, and takes the infant with him. The last laugh conveys more than just the fact that a murderer is still alive. It proves that the saga has a character that can adapt to shifts in directors, groups, and time periods. The sound of laughter, its deformation, and the broken movement combine to create a living logo that defies interpretation. This is where Dead End's legacy ends. Subsequent films might be tempted to maintain the mark and overlook the build-up. When a sequel makes it so evident what the public responds to, Three Fingers' laugh is easily picked up. Creating a new conflict that is comparable to reality is more challenging. Increasing the number of victims is simple. Making ensuring that every death ends the victim's position in the narrative more challenging. Finding another filthy building is not difficult. Making that location explain the family, like the paper mill, is more challenging. Because of this, the second chapter is sometimes cited as the point at which Wrong Turn strikes the best mix between action, black humor, and slasher, a more recognizable ensemble, a more traditional tension, and the potency of a threat uncovered for the first time, all retained in the first movie. Another advantage of Dead End is that it can experiment with the weight, because it is not required to safeguard the surprise. We are aware that the boy on the road is a trap when Kimberly exits the vehicle. We are aware that the cameras won't keep the competitors safe when they venture into the woods. We are familiar enough with the story to question Three Fingers' demise when Dale shoots him. The question of whether danger will materialize is not of interest. It's about determining which certainty it will shatter first. Kimberly's confidence that her significance will be acknowledged. Michael's conviction that contentment is possible. Amber feels the training is adequate. Jonesy thinks that dread may be concealed by loudness. Nina's conviction that security comes from independence. Even Dale's conviction that preparation and determination can ensure success. None make it out alive. A person can still decide not to leave someone behind, which is the only little idea that the movie validates. Because Nina is unable to stop Paul's axe, Mara is not saved. He doesn't save Dale, since he must remain to complete his mission. However, he rescues Jake in the shredder, Nina in the pit, and both on the road. This chain keeps the movie from being overly pessimistic. Exploitation rules the dead-end universe. The factory contaminated the land and exploited it. The family takes advantage of people that travel through the forest. Michael builds a program by taking advantage of rivals and partners. Elena attempts to take advantage of Michael's lust. Conflicts are turned into marketable contents by reality. Each level takes something and turns it into money, food, or attention, because they receive nothing in return. Jake and Nina break the chain. Jake is unsure of his ability to rescue her from the pit. Nina is unsure of her chances of defeating Pa and Ma. They make irrational investment judgments. They are actions taken, since abandoning the other would entail adopting the same reasoning that permeates their surroundings. On this double reading, even the title is effective. The movie is replete with dead ends, such as Kimberly's route, the uncommunicative set, the stolen caravan, the house without an exit, the pit, the garage of useless cars, and the shredder corridor. Every character advances with the belief that a restoration to normalcy will occur behind the following passage. Rather, he discovers a different family-run structure. However, the system is the true dead end. The land was contaminated by the paper mill, which was later abandoned without undoing the damage. The family cannot produce anything distinct from what came before it, since it reproduces in isolation. People are simplified by reality, and when they act outside of their roles, they are no longer acknowledged. Three Finger prepares a repetition that can only go back to the beginning by giving the infant the same meal and water. Because they break the pattern, Nina and Jake go. They don't emerge as the top rivals. They cease to be rivals. Ultimately, Wrong Turn 2 is more than just a running shredder. The picture of a split body and the arrow piercing to victims. The difference between the two types of families is what's left. A closed blood tie that was tainted and protected by violence on one side. Conversely, an unplanned connection between strangers that results from a decision and lasts just long enough to clear a path. However, because the children are theirs, Ma and Pa guard them. Despite not being a couple, Jake and Nina defend one another. The movie doesn't use a speech to highlight this distinction. It allows it to exist in the directions of the bodies, those who run away, those who come back, and those who stand in front of an arrow to buy time. It is a straightforward type of meaning that works well for stories that don't want to take their time explaining themselves. We then go back to Kimberly. She was annoyed with a work that she felt was beneath her image. Therefore, she was staring at her phone while driving. She exited the vehicle as soon as she struck the figure on the road. Even though it cost her her life, she made an effort to assist someone. That shattered trust serves as the foundation for the entire movie. Later on, Nina and Jake had to make the same decision under various circumstances: embrace the risk, stop when they could continue, and approach someone in need. The distinction is that they now know to examine the gesture's hidden surroundings. They are no longer individuals who unintentionally chose the incorrect route. They are survivors who are aware of the costs associated with each path. Wrong Turn 2. Dead End does not improve upon the original movie in terms of sophistication. It stands next to it, growing bolder, louder, and more self-conscious. It takes a fundamental idea, people being lost in a cannibal family's territory, and relates it to performance, industrial production, television, and the human yearning to return for someone. It is flawed, occasionally harsh on purpose, and uninterested in moderation. It does, however, have a unique belief in less expensive sequels, as long as the movie is clear about the experience it wants to provide. Every constraint may become style. Joe Lynch is aware of it. In order to keep the audience from unwinding, he needs the first F. He wants Henry Rollins to enter the wilderness as a presenter and emerge as a warrior. He wants a supper that will simultaneously make you laugh, make you feel repulsed, and share a family tale. He wants the chorus to be accompanied by the banjo. Instead of using the deserted factory as a backdrop, he wants it to be the machine that caused the issue and eventually consumes it. He wants the sequel to feel alive above all else. For this reason, even after numerous chapters, Dead End remains the place in the story where one goes back to remind themselves that taking the wrong road doesn't always result in a worse movie. Occasionally, it leads to the one place where a series finds its true potential. Jake and Nina are no longer employed at the paper factory. The youngster remained with Three Finger. The whole promise of Wrong Turn is contained between those two pictures. Something stays in the woods, someone escapes, and the next person, who sees a diversion, is unable to determine which of the two stories is in store for them. This was the path to the conclusion. If you were searching for the entire story and the significance of the conclusion, nevertheless, there is still an unanswered question at the end of the movie. In reality, who was observing whom? The solution seems straightforward at first. Michael watches the competitors with the crew. They have set up the clues, placed cameras all around the forest, and given each player a distinct role. Elena needs to draw attention. Jonesy needs to make a sound. Amber needs to create tension. Jake has to be the physical favorite. Nina has to be against the organization. Mara, who joined at the last minute, had to take Kimberly's place. The program does not look for whole individuals. It searches for behaviors that are simple to identify. Even before Michael has a chance to edit a single episode, every competitor has already been converted into narrative material when they arrive in the jungle. Their true identities are not revealed by the taped introductions. They help the viewer understand how to see them. Just a job, a statement, an attitude, and an individual turns into a role. This method is used against the audience in Wrong Turn 2. The movie is aware that Elena will be evaluated based on her ambition and her appearance when she first arrives. Jonesy wants us to view him as an obnoxious character when he speaks excessively. It seems that Nina's icy treatment of others makes us want to punish her for her animosity. Reality TV's format does more than only control the competitors. Additionally, it manipulates viewers by providing a rapid grid for classifying the victims. Then she begins to demolish it. Mara is more than simply an insecure producer. She is a lady who consents to reveal herself in order to assist the person she thinks she's in a relationship with. Not only is Jonesy careless, but he also stops using jokes to defend himself when he hangs around with Amber. Nina is more than just antisocial. She's someone who is afraid of depending on other people and still goes back when things go out of hand. These subtleties are revealed later in the movie, when several characters are already near death. It's a harsh decision and entirely logical. The identical thing would have been done in reverse on the reality show. Hours of human behavior would have been required to reduce them to a few minutes that could have verified the original label. Dead End displays the label first, followed by a preview of what the software probably would have removed from the edit. In the meantime, the family observes without any objectives. Kimberly is walking along the street when Three Finger notices her. Brother observes Elena by the water. Brother is staring at Elena, while sister is staring at him. Pa leaves the residence after the women. Before attacking, everyone examines the victims. They don't have to be aware of names, occupations, or reasons. They search for the time when a person lets their guard down, the point at which a body becomes isolated, and the route that will keep others from getting involved. Michael watches to make people look spectacular. To make them into meals. The family watches. The movie consistently juxtaposes the two logics, despite the fact that they appear to be incompatible. Both need to be kept apart. They both select the most vulnerable moment. A human being is reduced to what they can provide by both. Listens and visibility are on one side. Conversely, there are things and flesh to heal. The first gesture, to stop viewing a person as a whole, remains the same, but the result varies. Michael's death in front of the camera has such exact irony. Because of this, he doesn't pass away only because he is conceited or disloyal. He passes away inside the system he created. His suffering is transmitted by the monitor, yet nobody can stop it. The recording is still going on, the image is there, but the power Michael ascribed to visibility has disappeared. Being observed does not equate to salvation. The entire movie revolves on the same concept. There is a voice that can hear Kimberly when she speaks on the phone. However, it is unable to get to her. There are covert cameras all around Mara and Nina. However, they depart from the protected area right before they need to be located. Although no operator is seeing the footage, Amber and Jonesy are suspended in what appears to be a TV test setup. Michael appears on the screen to Jake and Nina. However, it is unable to assist him due to the distance between image and place. The eyeballs are multiplied by technology. Loneliness is not lessened by it. The only character who defies this rule without using a screen is Dale. He follows the blood, listens, searches for tangible evidence, and evaluates the area. He exploits the scent and the frailty of the prey, which the cannibals think they understand best, to set the trap for brother and sister. He doesn't attempt to view the entire paper factory. He establishes a path and compels the adversaries to pursue it. More, knowledge is not the source of his talent. It results from understanding what information is important. Every picture could be helpful to the staff. A footprint, a door that has been moved, or a drop of blood are more valuable to Dale than 10 monitors. The distinction explains why he can access the center of the family's domain, while Michael is transported erratically within his own caravan while surrounded by equipment. Nina also learns to change her appearance. She initially watches other people in an attempt to validate her own mistrust. Jonesy is shallow. Elena is conceited. Michael is a fraud. The program is absurd. Many of these evaluations are accurate, but they only keep her safe as long as the threat is social. When the hunt starts, Nina needs to start identifying who is staying instead of asking herself who she should trust. In the house, Mara remains by her side. Jake goes back to the pit. Dale walks into the dining area. A direction, not a presentation, defines each individual. This schooling of the gaze is finished with Nina's last visit to the paper factory. She could keep thinking about the road ahead of her when she was outside the building. Rather, she pivots and discovers a lack of presence. She no longer has Jake behind her. It's a small detail. No discovery, no stunning scream, and no camera pointing to the precise location. Just the void where someone else ought to have been. When Nina notices it, she interprets it and decides to go in a different path. She silently reacts to the entire reality show with her gesture. Michael would have inquired as to which competitor had the strength to cross the finish line by themselves. Nina shows that the question was incorrect. Those who continue to move forward are not the only ones who can survive. Occasionally, it depends on who observes that someone else has stopped following. The family has a very different perspective on the union. However, Ma and Pa share food, raise the infant, and guard brother and sister. Even if the movie depicts it through warped gestures, there is passion between them. Brother learns how to wield the bow from Pa. When sister notices the dynamite, she tries to assist brother. However, she responds to the children's deaths by taking part in Dale's murder. They have a genuine bond. It is more disturbing precisely because of this. The movie prevents us from thinking of them as emotionless beings. They cherish their own family, but they also see no worth in the lives of people who are not part of it. There is a limit to their togetherness. Protection is found within the blood. Consumption outside of the blood. Jake and Nina construct the opposite. They have different histories. They don't have the same residence, identity, or starting point. A program that sought to employ them brought them together by accident, and their trust only deepens when that program ends. Belonging is not requested by the bond. It demands attention from both parties. The shredder is more than just a final weapon because of its distinction. However, Ma and Pa are carried into the machine together after being struck by the same log. Family unity has always been their strength, but in the pivotal time, their intimacy keeps them from escaping the threat. As if the movie physically shut down the system they depict, they wind up in the same mechanism, but Three Finger stays outside. He begins with a simple pair, an adult and a child, while holding the newborn. The big family home he saw over dinner is no longer his, but he still has everything. He needs to reconstruct it. He's familiar with the area. He's an experienced hunter. He must impart both to a new generation. The car getaway is then completely reversed in the final image. Nina and Jake take off in a victim's vehicle. Three Finger remains close to the tainted water. They reintegrate into society by using an item that was taken from the family. He keeps the family going by using what society has given up. To opposed motions. Neither eliminates the other. Thus, Wrong Turn 2 ends with an unfinished victory, which is the most appropriate resolution for a movie that frequently discusses illusory control. They could see that Nina and Jake prevailed in the battle. After stopping Ma and Pa, they left the paper factory and located a car. They are unable to predict every outcome, eradicate every danger, or rectify the region's industrial past. It is not necessary to solve every problem in order to survive. It entails carrying the body past the point at which someone has determined it should end. This theory also explains why the movie keeps working even after the surprise has faded. We know who will perish, that Dale will go back to the paper factory, and that Three Finger is still alive when we see it again. The outcome no longer determines the stress. It depends on the little instances in which a choice could have altered the course. Michael could have been turned down by Mara. Nina might have been the first person the group trusted. The voice in the pit may have been disregarded by Jake. Nina was unable to return. These twists are far more important to the plot than the traps. The victims decide who will enter the last door, but the family sets the boundaries. And maybe this is what sets Dead End apart from a lot of other mechanical sequels from the same time period. While surviving is remembered for its purpose, deaths may be remembered for their form, because they are more pure than the rest. Nina and Jake are not living, since the movie made it clear from the start that they would be the main characters. They are not alive. Each of them chooses to go in the least convenient path at least once, which is why they are still alive, despite the forest's attempts to divide them. The direction of the pit. In the direction of the paper mill. In the other direction. The title's incorrect road is still there, tucked up among the trees, waiting for a new car. The youngster will keep developing. Three Finger will always be aware of routes that no map deems significant. Without considering what it has left behind, society is likely to keep passing by that area. However, two individuals are able to disrupt the anticipated migration for one night. The reality program is not won by them. They don't permanently ruin the family. They don't make the forest a secure environment. They simply go out together. And considering all that violence, it's a modest conclusion. However, Wrong Turn 2 has only ever genuinely promised this kind of triumph.